Hello, today we're going to show you how to install a Pakse Sapper handguard on your CZ Scorpion Evo pistol. This handguard is compatible with all 7.8-inch CZ pistol barrels. This means that whether you have a carbine handguard or a pistol handguard on your Evo, if the barrel itself is a factory barrel and 7.8 inches, this handguard is compatible. Before we install a handguard, let's go ahead and cover how the handguard is going to mount. And I think this will just potentially help in kind of the whole process. So before we go through it, let's do a quick overview. As you've probably heard, the Evo handguard is retained by a barrel nut. The barrel nut is a little different. We'll take it off real quick. So it's located behind the flash hider. The barrel nut on the Evo is a little bit different than an AR, for example, in that it doesn't retain the barrel to the upper receiver. The purpose of the barrel nut on the Scorpion Evo is to capture the handguard or the handguard shroud between the muzzle and the front surface of the upper receiver. So with this barrel nut removed, so we'll set aside the flash hider, the barrel nut, and what we'll be able to do here is remove the handguard and kind of, again, the purpose real quick is to show you what the barrel nut's doing, and I think that'll help with the rest of the installation procedure. So the barrel nut's holding the handguard shroud captive between the front surface of the upper receiver and the muzzle. Inside of the handguard shroud, there is a polymer collar, or it almost looks like a washer. And so when we tighten down our barrel nut, it's using the collar to lock and expand slightly into the handguard shroud, and together they hold it captive against the upper receiver. So in this process, what we're going to do is replace this handguard shroud with the Pakse Sapper handguard shroud. It's a direct replacement item. As kind of mentioned earlier, as long as your Evo came as a pistol, meaning it didn't have a stock on it from the factory, your handguard will be interchangeable with the Sapper handguard. There are a few configurations out there that use, this is a carbine handguard, a CZ USA carbine handguard. There are a couple configurations out there specifically sold with the flash can and this handguard. However, they still use the 7.8-inch barrel. The difference in that configuration is that instead of using this barrel nut that we took off the pistol with a spring tab that locks into the flash hider, because of the flash can configuration, the longer handguard, this model actually uses what we refer to as the carbine barrel nut wrench. The carbine barrel nut. It is a 21 millimeter hex that, again, is threaded for the barrel, and it still uses the polymer collar. These would be located down inside of the handguard and, again, function just like we saw with the other barrel nut. Both of these barrel nuts will work and function just fine with the Pakse Sapper handguard. So again, regardless of the handguard that is on your Evo now, even if it's an aftermarket free-floating handguard, as long as you have a factory 7.8-inch pistol barrel on your Evo, the Pakse Sapper handguard will be compatible. It'll be a direct drop-on to your Evo. That said, let's go ahead and get started with our installation. There are a couple different configurations, I guess you could say, of how your barrel nut might come out of the box. So we've got two different Evos. We'll call them straight out of the box. This particular Evo, if we remove the flash hider, has a barrel nut that's oriented with the flats such that we can use an off-the-shelf wrench. So we could use, an example, just a adjustable wrench, and make full contact with the wrench flats on both sides. We could also use a 20 millimeter open-ended wrench and make good contact with the barrel nut with the barrel nut itself. So in this particular case, just because of how the barrel nut's oriented from the factory, we wouldn't need any type of dedicated tools. We could use, again, a 20 millimeter open-ended wrench or even an adjustable wrench, and we would be able to get the barrel nut off. The preferred way, of course, is going to be to use a dedicated barrel nut tool. We manufacture this one at HBI Industries, and it's just a purpose-built tool. Again, looking at this particular Evo, even though the tool will be better, you could use an open-ended wrench or an adjustable wrench. There are, of course, going to be a number of Evos out there. Here's one where, because of the location, the orientation of the flats, how this nut is clocked from the factory, we can't really get our 20 millimeter wrench on there without interfering with the handguard or coming in at an angle, right? That's not going to work. If we try to come from the side, we don't get very good engagement because the angle on the front of the handguard is stopping the wrench. So this is a case, and again, in the 360 degrees that the barrel nut can turn, there's probably maybe 30 degrees on either side where you will be able to get wrenches on it. So while it is possible, the surefire way to get the barrel nut off is going to be to use a dedicated tool like this one. And maybe we can show it over here. The cutout and the profile of the tool is designed to clear the handguard as you rotate the barrel nut around. So we're going to go ahead and remove and replace this handguard with the Pakse Sapper handguard, and we're going to use the barrel nut tool, and should be able to knock it out in about 3 to 5 minutes. So the first thing to do is obviously going to be to make sure your weapon's clear. Make sure the magazine, nothing in it. Go ahead and drop the hammer, pull the trigger, and place it back into safe. We are going to break down this handguard, install the components into the Pakse Sapper handguard, and then swap the handguards. So let's go ahead and remove the charging handle. Just using a 3 millimeter punch, go ahead and push the charging handle retaining pin out. We'll set it aside. Using our punch, go ahead and depress the spring on the charging handle, slide it through, set it aside. 3 millimeter hex driver, we can remove the front sight. Set it aside. Reverse procedure here. We'll go ahead and put the front sight onto the new handguard. 3 millimeter again. Torque spec for the sight screws is 2 Newton meters. Go ahead and slide our charging handle into the new handguard. Drop the retaining pin through. Note this tab on the back of the retaining pin is going to face the receiver. So when you drop it into the handguard, make sure the tab's facing the receiver. Kind of slide it into place. And with this assembly set aside, let's go ahead and remove the handguard from the factory pistol. We're going to put this into a vise. Our vise here is equipped with neoprene soft jaws. These are flexible soft jaws that are not going to damage or mar the upper receiver. Wood blocks, or if you're creative with painting tape, you could probably get away with a different set of jaws, but highly recommended to get a set of neoprene jaws for this procedure. We're going to drop our barrel nut tool onto the barrel nut, and using a 3/4 inch ratchet, let's go ahead and remove the barrel nut. Disclaimer, this barrel nut's been off before. Yours is probably not going to come off this easy. From the factory, they tend to have quite a large amount of Loctite on them, or thread lock, and it'll take you several revolutions to get them to spin free like this. So Once you get the nut kind of coming off, remove it. We're gonna take the upper receiver and the whole Evo out of the vise. As we're doing this, let's be very careful not to lose or misplace either of the sling mounts or sling loops on the left and right side of the handguard. I like to just let gravity do the work, so holding the firearm with the muzzle in the air, go ahead and slide your handguard off. Slide the new handguard on. We're gonna drop it back into the vise. From the factory handguard, we still need to remove that plastic bushing that we talked about. Let's go ahead and do that and slip it onto the new handguard and start our barrel nut down into it. Here again is a situation where if you have a 20 millimeter, you can use it like that. You can also use an open-ended wrench. If you're reinstalling the carbine barrel nut that we talked about earlier, this is a 21 millimeter hex. We are going to use our barrel nut tool that we have been using before. There's the torque spec on the handguard is 8 to 10 foot-pounds, or about 10 newton meters, which is very low. If you have a torque wrench, and we'll show in a second, we'll go ahead and check it, but if you don't have a torque wrench, or if you're using an open-ended wrench or an adjustable wrench, go ahead and kind of tighten your barrel nut until you feel resistance, until it's tight by hand, so you can't push any further by hand. And then what we recommend is another 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. So maybe like that. If you're like me and you like to just validate that you've done everything correctly, again, you can grab a torque wrench. Make sure when you're doing this that your torque wrench is parallel or in plane with the driver. Don't try to get a torque reading with the wrench perpendicular to it or offset from it. Just make sure that your wrench is in plane, or again in parallel with the driver, and 8 to 10 foot-pounds. So that's what we have. Going higher on the barrel nut torque is not necessarily better. Like we talked about earlier, the purpose of the barrel nut is to capture the handguard, not to retain the barrel itself into the receiver. So further tightening the barrel nut at this point is only going to work to compress or deform the handguard itself. The flash hider, of course, just threads back on. We didn't use any thread lock in this application. If you choose to use thread locker, you can use Rockset, would be the preferred method. Loctite or Vibrotite make two good products. We typically on muzzle devices here will use 243, which is a high temperature blue, or Vibrotite is the 123 series. Again, a high temperature blue thread lock, so not permanent. Red really wouldn't be a great idea, only because the heat required to remove red Loctite may end up damaging the polymer handguard, either again the factory or an aftermarket handguard. So if you're going back and forth between handguards, try to stick with the blue series thread lock, or again Rockset's probably the best option if you have it. So let's go ahead and take it out of the vise, and we'll bring it back over with the selector and fire. Go ahead and check function. We can obviously check to make sure it's tight and don't have any wobble. And that is the entire procedure for replacing your factory handguard with a Pakse Sapper handguard. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always available via email, on social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're also here 10 hours a day over the phone if you need to call and talk to us. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out and we're here to help. Thanks for watching.